Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Bo. Hare Krishna, my humble obeisances. You are welcome to platform today. So I will briefly introduce you to the audience, then you can start the class, please.
Okay.
So my dear devotees, we are very fortunate to have His Grace Mahatma Prabhu with us today. Mahatma Prabhu joined ISKCON in 1969 and was initiated by Srila Prabhupada in 1970. He traveled widely facilitating workshops and retreats on such important practices as japa, forgiveness, humility, vows, and sexual purity. He has served as temple president, book distributor, Sankirtan leader, college preacher, membership director, and Vrindavan Institute for Higher Education teacher and co-director. He is the co-director of Bhakti Life, a non-profit organization that teaches the practices of devotional service through interactive workshops, retreats, and online courses and counseling. He is best known in ISKCON for his recorded and live music and for his workshops on japa and forgiveness. He is the founder of Touchstone Training, a company that teaches the practices of devotional service through interactive seminars and workshops. He is also a facilitator in Bhagavat's live, producers of live and online workshops and japa retreats. He lives in Alachua with his wife Janava and daughter Braja Sundari. So Maharaj, you are highly welcome to our platform today. We are honored to have your holiness with us. Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Nice to be here with all of you.
You're highly welcome. So I put the verse on the screen for you.
Yeah. So how are we going to do it? I chant and you
Prabhupada,
respond, or what?
Prabhupada chant Radha Madhava, you just go ahead alone because of the echo. If you want us to respond to the slokas, you can also let us know as you want.
Yeah. I'll chant it a few times myself.
Yes.
So you can respond if you want.
Okay.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, fifth chapter, text number 9. Yatha dharmadayas charta muni varyanukirtitaha na tata vasudevasya mahima hi anuvarnita yata dharmadayas charta muni bharyanukirtitaha na tata vasudevasya mahima yanuvarnitaha yata dharmadayas charta muni bharyun nukirtitaha na tata vasudevasya mahima yanuvarnitaha. Word meanings. Yata, as much as. Dharma adhaya. Dharma adhaya, all four principles of religious behavior. Cha, and. Arthaha, purposes. Munivarya, by yourself, the great sage. Anokirtitaha, repeatedly described. Na, not. Tata, in that way. Vasudevasya, the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. Mahima, glories. He, certainly. Anuvarnitaha, so constantly described. Translation. Although, great sage, you have very broadly described the four principles, beginning with religious performances. You have not described to such an extent the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vasudeva. So I will read that again. Although, great sage, you have very broadly described the four principles beginning with religious performances, you have not described to such an extent the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vasudeva. Purport. The prompt diagnosis of Sri Narada is at once declared. The root cause of the despondency of Vyasadeva was his deliberate avoidance of glorifying the Lord in his various editions of the Puranas. He has certainly, as a matter of course, given descriptions of the glories of the Lord, Sri Krishna, but not as many as given to religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, and salvation. In other words, in the other Puranas and Vedas, there was emphasis on these four principles of religion: dharma, artha, kama, moksha. Too much emphasis. These four items are by far inferior to engagement in devotional service of the Lord. Sri Vyasadeva, as the authorized scholar, knew very well this difference, and still, instead of giving more importance to the better type of engagement, namely devotional service to the Lord, he had more or less improperly used his valuable time, and thus he was despondent. From this, it is clearly indicated that no one can be pleased substantially without being engaged in the devotional service of the Lord. In Bhagavad Gita, this fact is clearly mentioned. After liberation, which is the last item in the line of performing religiosity, etc., one is engaged in pure devotional service. This is called the stage of self-realization, or the Brahma Bhuta stage, Srimad Bhagavatam 4:30-20. So Prabhupada's referring to Brahma Bhuta Prasanatma Bhagavad Gita, Nasochati Nakamshati. Samashaveshu Bhuteshu, that verse. Ad Bhaktim Labate Param. That's preliminary stage to bhakti. After attainment of this Brahma Bhuta stage, one is satisfied. But satisfaction is the beginning of transcendental bliss. One should progress by attaining neutrality and equality in the relative world. And passing this stage of equanimity, one is fixed in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. This is the instruction of the personality of Godhead in the Bhagavad Gita. The conclusion is that in order to maintain the status quo of the Brahma Bhuta stage, as also to increase the degree of transcendental realization, Narada recommended to Vyasadeva that he, Vyasadeva, should now eagerly and repeatedly describe the path of devotional service. This would cure him from gross despondency. Hare Krishna. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishnaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Shaminiti Namani. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Dasatari. Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangulangayate Girim Yat Kripatamaham Vande Siguru Dinatarinam. Kusha Das, what time should I end class?
Maharaj, the class is 1 hour, but if you have so many questions, it will take like 1 hour, 30 minutes to 2 hours.
Okay, so what I found, I mean, of course, I've read this verse long ago, maybe 50 years ago. My first time I read the Bhagavatam. And when I first read this verse, something stood out to me that never stood out before. Here is Vyasadeva is the incarnation, he's actually incarnation, literary incarnation of Krishna. Such an exalted soul. And he made a mistake, or he didn't do something properly. And he's being corrected by his spiritual master. And I found it just, of course, I knew this story, but I never really meditated on the fact that such an exalted soul apparently missed the essence. And how could that happen? And Prabhupada explains here that his spiritual master is correcting him or chastising him. And that is sometimes the duty of the spiritual master. He'll have to correct or he'll have to chastise. And, generally, I mean, Prabhupada said that he was chastised by his spiritual master once in the early days when he first met him. And he took that chastisement as great mercy. And one time Prabhupada chastised a devotee. And there was another devotee present. And Prabhupada was very, very heavy. And he was so heavy, the other devotee that was present was shaking. Prabhupada was so angry. And after the chastisement, Prabhupada, he told the devotee he chastised that he could go. And then that other devotee remained. So he asked Prabhupada, he said, when you chastise someone, what should the devotee think? Because when the spiritual master is displeased, sometimes a disciple can think, my spiritual life is ruined. I displeased my spiritual master. And Prabhupada said, you should think there are millions and millions of people in this world. And at this moment, your spiritual master is taking time to correct you. So you should think, well, this is great mercy. That he's giving me, my spiritual master is giving me attention. Now, and it's great mercy, and I deserve it. I've been corrected. I'm fortunate my spiritual master has corrected me. That's the proper way to take it. Of course, sometimes we don't take it that way, but that's how we should take it. Now, I have a story for you. It's really interesting. I've heard the story before, but last night I heard the story by the wife of the devotee that Prabhupada chastised. And this was a unique situation because this devotee two devotees had come to meet Prabhupada. And actually, they were asking questions which were actually challenging the authority of Prabhupada and the authority of the way he organized ISKCON. It was basically around having to follow the authority, and they were pointing out the defects in the authorities that they had to follow. Their temple president, the GBC, are the GBC perfect? They're conditioned souls. My temple president, he has this problem and that problem. Do I have to follow him? So Prabhupada was saying, yes, if I want you to follow them. And they said, well, we just want to follow you. And Prabhupada said, well, if you want to follow me, then I'm asking you to follow them. No, but they make mistakes. It was like this, going back and forth, and they were asking other questions. It was kind of challenging the authority structure within ISKCON, the way Prabhupada set it up. And then Prabhupada could see that they didn't want to accept his authority. And he said something really heavy, and this is the only time I've ever heard Prabhupada say this. Because they didn't want to follow what Prabhupada was asking, he said, I can see that you don't need a spiritual master. He said, I need a spiritual master, but I can see that you don't need a spiritual master. So you can go out and enjoy the material world. He said, why don't you just go out and enjoy the material world and do whatever you want? Wow. That was the only two disciples Srila Prabhupada ever rejected. And that anger was much different than the anger Prabhupada would sometimes use when he would chastise a devotee. And the anger that Prabhupada would use when he would chastise a devotee was to correct the devotee. And it was actually a form of mercy. That's how a devotee would see it. Oh, my spiritual master, he made a point very strongly. And sometimes if a person doesn't become angry, you don't get the point, or you don't think it's serious. But this case was entirely different. Prabhupada was chastising because they were not following. And by telling them they don't need a spiritual master, he was saying, you don't want to follow me. And by telling them go out and enjoy the material world, he's saying that's what you do when you don't have a spiritual master. You're only left to follow your whim, your own desire. So that's what they did. They left. They left ISKCON, left Krishna consciousness, did what they wanted. And and therefore they couldn't get the mercy of the spiritual master who was chastising them, because at that point they should have surrendered to Prabhupada. They should have said, oh, Srila Prabhupada, please forgive us. We'll just do what you say. But they didn't. So chastisement is mercy. In this case, in this one case, it wasn't mercy. It was a time in which Prabhupada gave up on the disciple. Now, I have never seen Prabhupada ever reject a disciple, ever. This was the only time. And no matter how fallen a devotee is, if they were willing somehow or other to try, Prabhupada always accepted them. Even despite whatever they've done, if they were sincere, if they would try. That's what Prabhupada was looking for. And so, if Prabhupada saw sincerity in the heart of a devotee, that was the sign that this devotee, he has my mercy. And there's a verse, I think it's in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. It says, glorious is that disciple who never gives up his guru. Glorious is that guru who will drag the disciple by the hair back to Godhead. And never give. Glorious is that guru who will never give up on the disciple. And glorious is that spiritual master who will never give up. Now, sometimes I've seen a disciple is chastised in modern day ISKCON. And the disciple can't take it. And sometimes the disciple actually turns against their spiritual master because the spiritual master was too heavy with them, or they feel they were fairly treated or something like that. And so that's dangerous. Now we have the example of Vyasadeva here. It's hard to say from this verse that you're just reading a verse, so you don't know the mood of Narada Muni. You're just reading a verse and you don't know. Was he like heavy? Why did you do this? Why, you've studied all the Vedas, but you did this. Like, what's wrong with you? You don't get that impression. You don't know. But you still get the impression there was some chastisement if you read the verse, the way it's, you've done all this, but you neglected to do this. You get that sense. And so I think it's important because there's no verse that, well, Vyasadeva was sulking and he didn't like the way he was treated by his spiritual master, so he decided he's not going to write any more Vedas or Bhagavatam, and you don't hear about him anymore. Sometimes that happens with a devotee. They're chastised. That's the last you see them. They can't take it. And we always have to take the chastisement of the Guru as mercy, that he's spending time with us, and consider what he's saying. So I know not everybody can do that. But we have to see the chastisement as mercy. At least that's what Prabhupada told us. And that's how Prabhupada saw it, well, when his spiritual master was heavy. It was just mercy. So we should be happy when we get mercy, right? Everyone wants mercy. You all want mercy, right? Yes. All right. Yes, Prabhu, I want mercy, but not in the form of chastisement. I want to be praised. I want nice words. I want kind words. I want my spiritual master to tell me, oh, Mataji, oh, Prabhu, you are such a great devotee. You are fantastic. You are this or that. That's what we want to hear, right? Then we think, oh, I pleased my spiritual master. We don't want to be chastised. And then we think if we're chastised, we've displeased our spiritual master. It's not the case. If you're chastised and you correct yourself, your spiritual master's pleased. Your spiritual master, not like an ordinary person that he's angry with you because he doesn't like you, he doesn't like what you did. He's chastising to correct you. So what I was thinking when I first read this verse was, well, this is so interesting because we're talking here about disciplic succession right in the beginning and the author of the Vedas, and he's getting chastised. What to speak of us, right? So, if you're ever chastised by your spiritual master or a senior devotee, you can think of, well, even Vyasadeva was chastised. What to speak of us? And it another thing that came to mind, which I also never realized when I first read this verse, is that we're always progressing in devotional service. We're always advancing. It's not a static process. So here you even have Vyasadeva, who is progressing by the grace of his guru, Narada Muni. It's not like, okay, once you become guru, that's it. You can't go any further. You are a perfect being, and that's it. And even with Vyasadeva, we see the author of the Vedas, that he's progressing still, as all of us are. Now, there's an interesting story. I don't know if you've heard it. Actually, I forget the context of the story. But one time Lord Chaitanya was asked to speak the Atmarama verse from the Bhagavatam. He spoke originally the Atmarama verse. And then Sarva Bhoma Bhattacharya said, can you explain the Atmarama verse like you had explained it before? And Lord Chaitanya said, I can't remember what I said. And then he went on to speak it in different ways. And then he quoted a verse, and this was a verse by Lord Shiva, and it was in regards to the Bhagavatam. And Lord Chaitanya was saying, sometimes you speak and Krishna uses you, and you're not even fully aware of what you're saying, but Krishna's using you. So Lord Chaitanya quoted a verse, and Lord Shiva said, I know the Bhagavatam. Sukadev knows the Bhagavatam. Vyasadeva, he might not know it. Maybe he knows it, maybe he doesn't. I'm not sure he knows it. And I think, what is that? Vyasadeva doesn't know. How could he not fully know the Bhagavatam? And he wrote it. It's interesting, isn't it? I know. Sukhaveti, Vyasaveti, Naveti va. I know. Aham Beti, Lord Shiva says, Aham Beti, I know. Sukha Beti, he knows. Vyasa Beti Naveti va. Maybe Vyas knows, maybe he doesn't know. How could he write the Vedas and not know? And Lord Chaitanya is saying, when I spoke those verses, originally the Atmarama verses, when I explained them, I can't remember them now, what I said. And his point was that Krishna was using him as a mouthpiece, and that information came through him. And I don't remember what I said, which is another way possibly of saying, I don't even understand what I said, but it came through me. I said it. So in the same way, Lord Shiva is saying, maybe Vyasadeva doesn't fully understand the Bhagavatam, but Krishna used him to write it down. Isn't that interesting? You find that interesting? You could speak something and you don't even understand it. And here's Vyasadeva, and Krishna's using him. And Prabhupada would read his own books. And devotees would say, Prabhupada, you're reading your own books. And he said, yes, because I didn't write them. Krishna wrote them, so now I'm reading them. as if I have to, let's look and see what I wrote. I have no, it was just Krishna using me. Now I have to read it because Krishna was speaking. Now I have to read what Krishna was speaking. That's pretty interesting, right? Um, uh, I think Shruti was explaining this, and he was saying, generally authors don't read their own books. That's awkward, isn't it? And here you have Prabhupada reading his own books because he's saying, I didn't write them. So it's like it's almost the way I took it was almost like it the same principle. It came through me, I wrote it down. Now let me read it. Now let me read what I wrote because I don't remember exactly what I wrote. It was just being transmitted by Krishna. So that shows that if one is an instrument for Krishna, sometimes he can do something and he doesn't understand how he did it. You might like Prabhupada once said, he said, I am not a scientist, but I defeat scientists. I'm not a scientist, but I defeat them. I said, how can I defeat them? They're these educated men. I'm defeating them. He said, Krishna is giving me that. Krishna is giving me that knowledge that I can do that, even though they have all the education. So that was always Prabhupada's mood. Krishna he'll use you if you want to be used. He'll give you intelligence. He'll give you the right words. And as young devotees, we didn't know much anyway, so we didn't have much choice other than, okay, Krishna, I'm going to do this. I don't know how to do it, but you can use me. You see now when you join ISKCON, there's so many training programs. You just go online and you can hear from so many senior devotees. We didn't have that. Our senior, let's say when I joined, I think the senior most person in my temple was the temple president, and he was probably around 2.5 years. And I think he was 29, 2.5 years in the movement. And, to us, I was 19, 29 was like an old man. And 2.5 years in ISKCON, because ISKCON was only really, it was only like 4 years. So he'd been in ISKCON since, almost the beginning. So to us, he was like senior. So in fact, nobody knew that much. And Prabhupada was asking us to do a lot. And how did we do it? And Prabhupada would say, Krishna will give you intelligence. I'd say, okay. There wasn't many people to instruct us. We didn't really have a choice. Okay, go start a temple. How do I do it? Krishna will give you intelligence. Go cook. How do I do it? Krishna will give you intelligence. Oh, it's time for you to give Bhagavatam class. I never read the Bhagavatam. What is the Bhagavatam? Oh, it's this book. Take it off the shelf. Just read the verse and speak what you know. Okay. And sometimes a devotee would like read the verse in purport and read the next verse in purport. He didn't know what to say. I just keep reading. It's like, that's what we would do till Krishna would inspire us to say something or give us some intelligence how to do something. So Vyasadeva is, you could see Vyasadeva is the instrument. Does he know the Vedas or does he not know? Well, he knows. Yeah, we're not sure. Now his guru has to come and tell him, well, you made a mistake here. Okay, all right. Thank you for correcting me. I didn't know that. Even Vyasadeva, how is that possible? So it's possible. But then there's the guru to correct. And many times Prabhupada would correct things we never knew were wrong. Why'd you do this? Why'd you do that? We're like, oh, did I do something wrong? We had no idea. So sometimes Krishna will reveal to us what is right, and sometimes not, and the spiritual master or other devotees will come and correct us. So that's one point. Now, we have the main point of the verse, which probably you must have discussed a little bit yesterday because the previous verse is similar. And it's a discussion of the four principles, Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. And we're not interested ultimately in any of those dharma, what you do, dharma, religious activity, it's really um in the Vedas what's considered dharma, religious activity, then it produces the next stage, artha, money. If you're religious, if you're pious, then you create good karma. You'll get wealth. You'll be wealthy. Create good karma. And if you're wealthy, what do you do when you're wealthy? What happens when you're wealthy? Get to the next level. You have money so you can satisfy your senses. More money you have, the more sense gratification you can buy. And then what's the idea? The idea is that you've enjoyed life, satisfied your senses, and then now you decide to renounce moksha. So moksha is liberation, but Lord Chaitanya, as we know, said prema pumarto mahan. But beyond liberation, there's love. So that's really what's being said here. Okay, you describe this, and he later, it's interesting what he said. It's like, it's basically he's saying, another way of looking at least the way I look at it, is like, is Kali Yuga, just these people can't do this. It's not necessary. Just get right to the essence. And he's saying, really ultimately, what's the use of all this? Which is interesting because this is one of the main aspects of the Vedas. But it's what Prabhupada calls material religion. You use God to get ahead in this world. And even you use God to get liberated, but that liberated state, you're not even serving. It's a neutral state. And Vyasadeva is being told, you know, basically you just wasted your time doing that because what's the point? You don't have to do this. You can go straight to the Bhagavatam. Now, we were distributing Bhagavatams when in our days of book distribution, the Bhagavatams were coming out canto by canto periodically. When they would come out canto by canto, did you get like thousands? Oh, the fifth canto is just printed, and they'd print so many thousands. I don't know how many, and they would give them to the book distributors, like in order to pay for the printing. There weren't that many devotees, and there weren't that many devotees buying sets. So those books were being distributed. Okay, the fifth canto just came out. All the hellish planets and the forest of material enjoyment and all the suffering in the material world. Okay, distribute that one. So we go out to the airport, and I felt so awkward. I felt that people are fortunate, but I felt awkward. I thought, who are these people I'm distributing this Bhagavatam to? And what is this Bhagavatam? It's such a exalted book, and these people don't know anything about anything. And we're giving them Bhagavatam. And Prabhupada's like, yeah, give them Bhagavatam, give them Chaitanya Charitamrita, Nectar of Devotion, Nectar of Instruction, all these very elevated books. And I thought, this seems to be like such a paradox. That this is such an exalted book, and these people, they don't know anything. They're breaking all the principles. And Prabhupada, if they read one word, if they touch the book, their life will be changed. Then he said, it's like a deity. So then we thought, okay, it's kind of like we're distributing deities, and it'll go into their home and it'll purify their home. That was kind of like the idea. And Prabhupada never said, well, you're not qualified to read Bhagavatam. Nobody's qualified to read Bhagavatam. He was saying, no, distribute these books, get them in the libraries of all universities. People should see these books. Scholars should read these books. He never said no one's qualified. And I always thought, how could these people read these books? Nobody's qualified. And Prabhupada, no, if they read one word, one syllable, even if they don't even read, they just touch it. And so we would distribute the books. And a lot of people did not understand, but some people did. And They open it and try to read it, and they're benefited on different levels. Not that we shouldn't try to write books uh, that reach the common man, but still, um, this Bhagavatam is it's accepted. It's sung Grinanti Gayanti Sadhava by the sadhus and great. It will be accepted by good men. So Prabhupada is, then he wrote the Krishna book. You remember the Krishna book. It came out in 1970 because Prabhupada was afraid maybe he wouldn't be able to translate the 10th canto. And he thought, why don't I just do a summary of it? It was the same thing with Nectar of Devotion. Why don't I do a summary? Just, Prabhupada never did verse by verse Nectar of Devotion, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. So Krishna book was the same thing. Why don't you, just in case, so we can give Krishna book. Now, we didn't, 1970, we only had, 1970, we only had first canto of Bhagavatam. So in 1970, Prabhupada came out with a Krishna book. And then we were able to hear the Leelas of Krishna. We didn't really know them, knew a few, but not many. So when Krishna book came out, it's the whole 10th canto that we understood. Oh, this is Krishna. This is God. This is what he does. So, and then we distributed those books, and people were reading about Krishna and getting purified and becoming devotees. We're thinking, this is amazing. They don't know who God is, and we're giving them the 10th canto of Bhagavatam. And you might be thinking, wait a minute, 10th canto, you're supposed to read 9 cantos before you read the 10th canto. And now Prabhupada's translating the 10th canto and saying, distribute Krishna book. Wow, we're distributing Krishna book, the 10th canto, to average men and women on the street who know nothing about Krishna, who may be breaking all kinds of religious principles, not following religious principles, breaking other principles. And Prabhupada's view was, this is Kali Yuga, this is mercy. If they read it, they'll become purified. This is what Lord Chaitanya wants. So now we can see from this verse that Kali Yuga, it's Kali Yuga. And in Kali Yuga, it's like we don't think about who's qualified. It's just, we go like right to the highest thing. It's such an interesting age. Because, you have the Vedas. Vyasadeva compiles the Vedas, and the Vedas are being used. And they're being passed down for generations. And now it comes to Kali Yuga, and Narada's saying, okay, it's Kali Yuga. So in Kali Yuga, we go right to the top. Now it's Kali Yuga. It's almost like saying, well, what he did say is, he's saying, like, look at people now in Kali Yuga. They're completely into sense gratification. They're people, this is the lowest people have ever been. This is the lowest age. So in previous ages, people are dharmic, they're more religious, they're more pious. And we could say perhaps this dharma, artha, kama, moksha process is useful. But we can see in Kali Yuga, it's such an interesting age, where rather than go through levels of qualifying oneself, in Kali Yuga, we get the Bhagavatam and we get the holy name. Okay, here's the highest thing. And just take it. And Prabhupada's asking us, give it to everybody, and give the Bhagavatam to everybody. And you would think, yeah, but don't they need some qualification? I mean, after all, this is the Bhagavatam. It's such an elevated literature. No, give them Bhagavatam, give them Krishna book, give them the holy name. But Prabhupada, in Krishna book, it describes Rasa Lila. That is such a high thing. Yes, and it will purify them of their sex desire, because we've explained the philosophy in Krishna book so they can understand. So now here we are talking to ordinary men and women who've never heard the Vedas, or maybe some have heard, but most people haven't. And we're giving them the Krishna book, which has Rasa Lila in it. I mean, that's inconceivable, isn't it? You would think, no, That Krishna book, the Bhagavatam, is just for devotees. We're not supposed to distribute it. And Prabhupada is saying, no, distribute it. And he's saying, and Vyasadeva is, Narada Muni is saying, he said, you know, all this other stuff you put in the Vedas, it's just going to backfire, because when you say dharma, artha, kama, moksha, the people, that's what they want. They want money. They want sense gratification. This is like, you're just misleading them. It's not going to work. Just give them rasa lila. You can imagine what Vyasadeva was thinking. Like, what? Did I hear you right? You mean I'm supposed to just put in all these leelas? That's what the Bhagavatam's for? I should write a book of just Krishna Leela? You could imagine Vyasadeva might have been taken back. Really? Like that, like people can handle this? And basically Narada Muni is saying, yeah, that's exactly what they need, and they can handle it. They just need to hear about Krishna Leela and love of Krishna, and they need to hear about pure devotees, and they don't need to hear about anything else, because in Kali Yuga, nothing else is going to help them. They're not even, you say they're not qualified to hear. No, they're not qualified for Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. That'll just ruin them. They don't know how to do it. They'll get sidetracked. Plus, it's Kali Yuga. You don't need it. Just give them pure Krishna Katha. That's all they need. And then in the Bhagavatam, right in the beginning, Vyasadeva states that this Bhagavatam is Amala Purana. This Bhagavatam is just going to be, the pure nectar of Krishna Lila, and that's what people need. And so Prabhupada says, okay, Narada Muni is analyzing. This is a problem. We don't need all these Vedas anymore. It's just like, it's Kali Yuga. This is all we need. So, Kali Yuga it's a mess. We know that. And it's really got messy in the last 5-10 years, I think, even more so than normal. And recently with COVID, and it keeps spreading, and political upheaval. And we think, what have I done to be born in Kali Yuga? It's so bad. I'm still here in the material world. I haven't gone back to Godhead. But there's another way to look at it. It's Kali Yuga. And now in Kali Yuga, we've been given this pure nectar. We're so fortunate. I was telling my wife the other day, I said, it's interesting that you come to the material world, and then you can go to Boma Vrindavan when you become purified, and you can engage in Krishna Lila. And those Leelas are Leelas that Krishna, most of them, he doesn't have in the spiritual world, or many of them. They just have it on this planet, like Damodar. We're all meditating on Damodar. That's only on this planet. So in that sense, well, we're a bit fortunate that we're here on this planet, that we can hear about these Leelas and get absorbed. So, this is the process. And there's one other point, this interesting point that Prabhupada's talking about. He's talking about the Brahma Bhuta stage. And this Brahma Bhuta stage, you find in the second chapter of the Gita, and Prabhupada's referring to this. Well, he uses two words here. Neutrality and equality in the relative world. What does he mean here? Neutrality and equality. Neutrality and equality means not being disturbed by happiness and stress, victory, defeat, success, failure, hot and cold, fame and infamy. Krishna uses all these words in the second chapter. And he's telling Arjuna, don't be affected by these things. And then he says, and if you're not affected by happiness and stress, then you become eligible for liberation. Then it's like you're in the train station. That's the train station to get on the train back to Godhead. But in order to get to the train station, you have to be equipoised. Don't be upset when things are bad. Don't be overwhelmed when things are good. If you lose the battle, don't cry. If you win the battle, don't become overly jubilant. Just be equiposed, be neutral. Be neutral towards people. Don't be prejudiced. Pandita Samadarshana. This is what Prabhupada is referring to here. After liberation, which is the last item in performing religiosity, one is engaged in pure devotional service. And then you might say, well, now I'm engaged in devotional service and I'm trying to do it purely. And Prabhupada said, if you do it sincerely under his order, it's also pure devotional service. And you might say, but I never attained Brahma Bhuta. Sometimes when things are difficult, I'm affected. But Prabhupada explained it in a different way in relation to devotional service. So let's say you're in a situation and you're affected. You're overwhelmed somewhat by distress or unhappiness. And then you're thinking, just see, I'm so far from this Brahma Bhuta stage of self-realization because I'm so affected. My devotee was upset with me and my mind is agitated, or I tried to do my service and my president chastised me. I did it wrong and now I'm upset. I'm so affected. But Prabhupada said there's another aspect to this. And it's not, this Brahma Bhuta stage doesn't always mean you're not affected, but it means your devotional service is not affected, even if you are affected. So that's another stage. It's because we sometimes need to redefine terms which relate more to our position, our condition. So this is one example Prabhupada gives, that equality, neutrality, don't be affected by happiness and distress and so forth. What's the goal? Well, do your duty steadily. So if you're doing your duty steadily, it's a sign you're not affected, even if you feel you're affected. No, I'm affected. I'm very upset today. Okay, but be Brahma Bhuta, even though you're upset, continue doing your service. Don't let the upset overwhelm you. So that's one aspect. Then there's another interesting aspect. There's something I always found very interesting. That once Srila Prabhupada was asked by a book distributor, will we become self-realized by distributing books? And Prabhupada said something that he didn't expect. He said the fact that you're going out every day on book distribution means you are self-realized. Of course, nobody thought they were self-realized. So it was like, I'm self-realized because I go out on book distribution every day. And so this was interesting because oftentimes Prabhupada would define things like love of Krishna, pure devotional service, you're on the spiritual platform, you're self-realized, in ways that seem somewhat at odds with the way he described in his books these things. I'm not self-realized. I'm self-realized because I go on book distribution every day. I don't feel like I'm self-realized. I'm distributing books to young ladies. They're attractive women. I'm not equipoised. Sometimes I'm disturbed. Sometimes the weather's cold and it bothers me. Sometimes people become upset with me and I'm disturbed. So what was Prabhupada's point? His point was that you may not feel yourself realized, but the fact that you go out every day means that you realize that your service to Krishna is important. And that really means you're on the Brahma Bhuta platform because you realize this is the spiritual platform and you're going out every day. So Prabhupada kind of redefined what he meant by self-realization by saying, if you do devotional service steadily every day, despite all the difficulty, that's Brahma Bhuta Prasanatma. That means you're self-realized because you realize ultimately catering to the needs of the body is not what life is for. So you're willing to go out and accept some austerity, discomfort. So that means you're self-realized. That's an interesting way of looking at self-realization. Prabhupada said, all my disciples are pure devotees. Another definition of pure devotee. They're all, if they follow me, they're all engaged in pure devotional service. So again, it kind of points to the point like, okay, you don't have to go through all these stages. Then when you become self-realized, you have full realization that you are spirit soul, full of knowledge and bliss and eternal, then we'll send you out on book distribution. No, the second day after we joined, at least on our day, okay, you're going out on the Sankirtan. Here's your books. Here's your Back to Guided magazine. Why are you giving these to me? Because you're self-realized. You joined the temple. That means you realize you're not the body. You're willing to get up early and chant and do all the things that you do if you're not the body. If you realized you're the body, you wouldn't have joined the temple. You'd be at home sleeping now. But now you're up in the morning chanting. That means you're self-realized. Really? I'm self-realized. Well, you realize that you're not the body in the sense, at least you're not acting as if you're a body. You're acting like you're a soul. And if you're acting like a soul, then I will give you the stamp of, Prabhupada said, I will give you the stamp of approval. Not that he said that, but more or less he's saying, I'll give you the stamp of approval that you're self-realized because you don't want to get up in the morning, but you do. And it's difficult to do this service, but you're doing it. And you're saying, but Prabhu, in my mind, I'm agitated and I'm complaining. Yeah, but you're doing the service. You're self-realized. You're tolerating. You're not being affected. You're equipoised. You're neutral. You're not being affected. No, but I am very affected. I'm very disturbed. No, but you're doing your service. You haven't given it up. So that was Prabhupada's definition of Brahmabhuta or self-realization. So we should remember that no matter what, don't give it up. And if we give it up, that's the weakness. Then we're giving into, then that's the material conception. I'm coming off the Brahmabhuta platform because I'm disturbed and I'm giving into that disturbance. So as long as we tolerate the disturbance, then we can be considered, oh, you're on the self-realized platform. And in that way, if you've ever wondered about this verse, well, don't I have to come to this stage? Because this verse says, after I come to this Brahmabhuta stage, then I can engage in devotional service. Now, we're thinking, but I've never even come to that stage. So, maybe I should be working on that before I, can do all this service. It was not the way Prabhupada presented it. One man challenged Prabhupada and he said, challenged him that, do you see everyone equally? Prabhupada said, no, I'm not that advanced. I see an elephant and a cow and a dog eater. So the man was like challenging him. Something like that. I forget the details, but, Prabhupada was saying, he lacked in this equal vision. And then he was taking this humble position. He was playing with the man. And then Prabhupada said, I equally try to give Krishna consciousness to everyone without discrimination. That is my equal vision. And the man, he liked that so much. He accepted that. And so it's a fact, you might say, but Prabhu, I don't see people equally. Here's a rich man, here's a poor man, there's a fat man, a thin man, successful man. This man is a failure. Here's a beautiful man, here's an ugly man. Here's a dog, here's a cat. I see them all differently. I discriminate. I'm a materially conditioned soul. And Prabhupada's saying, no, if you see that everyone equally deserves Krishna consciousness and you equally try to give it to them, then you're samadarshana, you're seeing equally. Wow. That's interesting, isn't it? Because we would never think pandita, samadarshana, brahmani, gabi, hashini, the cow, the elephant, the brahman, I don't see them equally. I see an elephant, I get out of the way. I don't want to get run over. I see a Brahman, I pay obeisances. I see a dog, maybe the dog's diseased, keep the dog at a distance. Maybe he's got rabies, I don't want to get bitten. Of course, naturally. But so I have different feelings. But the devotee thinks, oh, there's a dog, give him some prasadam. So this was Prabhupada's, this kind of like reinterpreted for us in Kali Yuga, all these things. So now we're all pandita samadarshan. We all have equal vision. Interesting, right? Because we equally want it. We go out and we distribute Krishna consciousness to everybody. We invite everybody to come to the temple. They all come to the temple. We don't discriminate. Well, okay, you don't get prasadam today because you're too fat. You don't need any. Or, you're very attractive. I'll give you more prasadam. I like you. No. So this is how we understand that Prabhupada's engaging us. And it's like one day, all of a sudden, if we do what Prabhupada says, we're on the Brahma Bhuta platform, and here you can read Bhagavatam, uh, and no problem. And here's the holy name, and just chant it, no problem. So, and the last thing I want to say, and then we'll take questions, is let's read this last thing. The conclusion is that in order to maintain the status quo of the Brahma Bhuta stage, as also to increase the degree of transcendental realization, Narada recommended to Vyasadeva that he should now eagerly and repeatedly describe the path of devotional service. So the world, this would cure him from gross despondency. Isn't it so? It's the same point. It's saying, well, you just hear Bhagavatam, and that will suffice for the Brahma Bhuta stage. You'll get that. You engage in devotional service. It will take you to the level of pure devotional service by hearing about Krishna. Until you get to the Brahma Bhuta stage, you don't have to worry about the Brahma Bhuta stage. Just hear about Krishna, you'll get there. Or you already are there by hearing about Krishna, immediately transcendental. And this is what's actually going to awaken pure devotional service, hearing. And this other stuff, it's not really going to do much. But if you hear about Krishna, you'll automatically come to Brahma Bhuta, so don't worry about it. And the last thing, it's interesting. Vyasadeva was despondent, and despondency generally is a symptom of some kind of material affliction. Nasochiti nakangshiti, you don't lament. And now he's feeling like something is wrong here. Something is wrong. And we would call this intuition. He knew. He didn't know why, but he knew. So sometimes Krishna, gives you a feeling like something's wrong. I don't know what it is. I don't feel satisfied. I don't feel right. I know I've done something wrong, or something's missing, or I said the wrong thing, or I feel bad for having done something. So Vyasadeva was in that position. Sometimes we're in that position. And he doesn't know what it is. And then Narada, Narada already shows up at the right time, the right place. He knows where to be. And now we have this story. And so even Vyasadeva is this great sage. It's so interesting that even this great sage, Krishna used him for this Leela to show that even on this advanced stage, sometimes something is not right. And if you ever feel like that, something is not right, don't deny the feeling, don't ignore it. But think about it or question senior devotees as I'm feeling despondent. I feel like something's missing in my life. What's going on? Explore that, because in that exploration, you may find actually I'm neglecting something, or I'm not hearing enough, or my rounds aren't good enough, or there's a service my Guru Maharaj wants me to do, and I just put it on a back burner, and I'm not doing it, and I know it's important and I should be. And so you want to reflect on, if you're feeling some kind of despondency, what's the cause of it? Because in that reflection, then you may be able to confront the actual problem and solve it. And so when Vyasadeva did what Narada Muni told him, his despondency was resolved. The despondency went away because this was the cause of his despondency. I didn't glorify Krishna. I sometimes would give lectures to non-devotees on forgiveness. And then sometimes at the end of the lecture, I would feel despondent. I said, I didn't get to glorify Krishna. I feel just like this. I told them about forgiveness. Okay, that's nice, but doesn't necessarily mean that's going to help them in their Krishna consciousness. I mean, we also talk about karma and other philosophical ideas, but sometimes I just want to tell them about Krishna directly. And, I often think, why am I feeling despondent? He said, yeah, because you didn't get to tell them about Krishna. Is this okay? Is this good? What should we do? Is this helping people? Is it, is it something I just have to tolerate because it will bring them to Krishna? Whatever. We confront the feeling. That's my point. We don't neglect it. Okay. So now I'm finished. Hope you're all still awake. And now we can have questions. If you're not awake, on the count of 3, wake up. 1, 2, 3. Okay, now you're all awake. Hope I didn't put you to sleep. Hare Krishna. So, how do we do this?
Thank you, Maharaj, for your wonderful class. We have some questions on the chat room.
Okay. You want to read them or should I read them?
I will read it for you. The first question is from Sanem. Yeah, it's from Dr. Vijay Lakshmi Patel.
Yeah.
He's asking if Vyasadeva is the literal incarnation of Krishna, then how come he forgot to write about devotional service in the Vedanta?
I mean, ultimately, the answer is because this is a Leela that Krishna wanted to engage. But I think I answered the question in the beginning of the class that even one may not fully understand what one is doing, and Krishna can use them as a mouthpiece. Even though, let's say, I'm not fully self-realized, Krishna can use me to speak things that only a self-realized person would speak, even though I'm not fully realized, if Krishna wants. Or like sometimes I have experience, I think a lot of us have this experience. You'll say something in class and a person will say, you spoke right to me. That was exactly what I needed to hear. And you had no idea that person needed to hear that. But Krishna knew that person needed to hear that. And so what you're saying is speaking right to the problem or to the question that the person has. So Krishna can use you that way. Even you don't have the full realization. It comes through you. And those discussions with Ramananda Roy and Lord Chaitanya, Ramananda Roy was explaining so many things. And Lord Chaitanya is saying, this was like wonderful. And Ramananda Roy, he's saying, actually, my tongue is like a stringed instrument and you're actually playing it. So it's like you're making me speak all these things. So Krishna can do that. So it's Vyasadev's position to write the Vedas. That's his seva. And as I was saying, even great personalities like Vyasadeva are growing in their Krishna consciousness and expanding. So I think it's a good example that we shouldn't shy away from service we may not always feel completely qualified to do. And we can depend on Krishna. And if Krishna wants us to do it, he'll give us the qualification. Sometimes we can make a mess of things if we're really unqualified, especially if we're dealing with other people's lives. You don't have to be careful. But often devotees see that they had to do things they weren't qualified to do. And Krishna, gave him the ability and intelligence. One
Thank you, Maharaj.
One last thing I want to say. Devamrita Swami, he was once giving a lecture, and he said, when Prabhupada was here, I did many things. And when I reflect back on them today, like 20 years later, it was probably 20 years or 30 years after Prabhupada left, he said, when I reflect back on them, I don't even understand how I was able to do those things as such a young devotee. So, I have a book of realizations that I wrote when I was about in the movement 2 years. And sometimes I'll read them and I'll think, how did I understand all that? I'd only been a devotee 2 years. So, and I'll read what I wrote and I'll think, this is a pretty deep realization. And I'll realize and said that when I wrote that, I probably didn't realize much about it as I do now, but still I had that realization. Krishna was inspiring me. So that's my answer. Okay, next question.
Thank you, Maharaj. You speak about, in the course of your lecture, how in the early days, Prabhupada will say, Krishna will give you intelligence.
Yes.
So how do we compare it with efforts? Because one may say, let's just practice devotional service and don't disturb the world. Krishna will give them intelligence to voluntarily come to devotional service. So how do we compare giving intelligence by Krishna to efforts to change things or to help
Oh, yeah.
people?
Yeah. Well, they both work together. It's actually, that's, well, there's two ways you get intelligence. One way is by effort. Okay, Krishna, I have to do this. But if you just make your own effort without depending on Krishna, that's actually arrogance. Where if you say, Krishna, I have to do this, but I don't feel qualified, then in that lack of qualification is that's where Krishna steps in and gives the intelligence. And it's not like, well, I'm not sure if they're saying, well, if I just make the effort, I'm acting without intelligence and I'm just trying. But Prabhupada's instruction, at least to me, was you make the effort, but you make it in humility, which means I'm making the effort, but I don't feel I'm qualified. And so it's like you create a gap and you allow Krishna to enter the gap. And that gap is I lack the ability and I lack the intelligence. So Krishna, please fill this gap. So it doesn't mean I don't make the effort and I don't make effort until Krishna fills the gap. But oftentimes it's because we're making the effort and because we're humble, that's why Krishna gives the intelligence. It's like if you don't make the effort, why does he have to give you intelligence? You're not doing anything. So in a sense, you can say the effort is what is the catalyst for intelligence, but you always have to think, okay, I'm not perfect. I'm not the most intelligent person. I need help and I need intelligence. But I'm going to go out and make the effort anyway, no matter what, because that's what Krishna wants me to do or my guru wants me to do. So that's humility.
Thank you.
I don't know if
Our
that
next,
answered the question. I
yeah,
wasn't
yeah,
sure.
perfectly. That's okay. That's good. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Our next question is from Sahadev Prabhu from US. Sahadev, please.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Prabhu, are you in the States?
Where are you, Sahadev?
I'm in Harrisburg, close to Gidanagri.
Oh, okay.
We're really sorry for getting you up so early. Maybe next time we can try to adjust. I mean, I'm sure the administrators and the congregation will be happy to adjust the time for you. So it will be too early.
I was thinking before you contacted me, I was thinking, well, here I am in Alachua, I'm not traveling. And my schedule is, it's quite easy compared to traveling. And I was feeling like I need to do some austerity. And then, Giridhari, she writes, can you give class? And I look on my, think, oh, it's 3:00. At that time she asked me, I was sick, I couldn't do it. And then the night before last, 3 nights ago, I went to bed at 12 midnight. Somehow I couldn't go to sleep till midnight. And I was thinking, I can't go to bed at midnight and wake up at 2:30. It's going to ruin my day. And then the night before last, I went to bed at 11:30 and I was thinking, I don't know if I can give this class. And I forced myself. So I'm okay. I got to bed a little earlier. And austerity is the wealth of the Brahmins. So you don't have to worry about me. I'm okay.
All right, thank you. So my question is, I believe the devotional service is much easier for some of us, like the second generation, unlike you, the direct disciples of Sri Prabhupada, because you had nobody to look up to understand what to do, what not to do. For us, it's easier because we can look up to you and other Sri Prabhupada disciples to understand this is right, this is not right. So
Yes.
would you be willing to share with us what made you so focused and understand that we have to do things this way, not do things that way, and that has been keeping you in the Vaishnava circles till today? Thank you, Hare Krishna.
What made me so focused, even in spite of the fact that we didn't have senior association and we were able to follow.
Yes.
I think we could say the answer will be different for different devotees. Maybe some answers are similar. My particular answer was something like, when I came across Krishna consciousness, it was like to me, this is what I was looking for, and I finally found it. And it was like, this is so precious. It's so valuable. How could I ever give it up? Like Prahlad Maharaj, you know that prayer by Prahlad Maharaj? He was glorifying Narada Muni. He said, Narada Muni has saved me. How could I give up his service? So it's like, that was one side of it. How could, this is like, here's a jewel. You just be given a jewel, and I'm not going to take the jewel and just like put it somewhere and forget where it is. This is too valuable. This has to be like right in my heart. And then the other side, which is maybe similar, was now Prabhupada has a mission, and he's asking us to take the mission. Like, it's in your hands. Prabhupada used to say, I'm an old man. I could leave at any moment. Here's the mission. It's in your hands. So I always felt like, how could I give up the mission which Prabhupada gave? Because he's no longer here. He's given us the mission, and he's told us, take it forward. So despite whatever difficulties I face personally or in spreading Krishna consciousness, these two things, you have a jewel, cultivate this jewel, take care of it, keep it shiny, it's going to illuminate your life. And this jewel is going to illuminate other people's lives, and your spiritual master wants you to give it to other people. So with those two things in front of me, it was like, whatever happens, good or bad or difficult, whatever, how can I give up? Like Prahlad Maharaj, how can I give up? My spiritual master saved me. How can I give up his service? That's how I felt. So the other point I was thinking was, like when you were saying, well, we didn't have much association. And so it's kind of like we just adjusted to what we have. It's like, this is the goal. You want to, cultivate a field, and all you have are hand tools, and all you have is a plow and a bull. Okay, so that's what you use. The guy next door has a tractor and all these mechanized tools. You don't have it. So you deal with what you have. And so I think that was kind of our mood. Well, this is what we have. This is, for us, 2 years was a senior devotee. So, okay, that's what we have. And we made use of it. It was like just a hand tool. So I think that's the idea, whatever situation you're in, whatever Krishna gives you, this is what I have now. Maybe I'm living away from devotees, or whatever my situation is what I have. So I have to make best use of it. And I can't say I'm going to give up, because the jewel is too valuable. The goal is too valuable. And Prabhupada's put you on the track, and so you can achieve this goal. And how could you give it up? This is like so special, so rare. That was my feeling. That I think that's always was my feeling from the day one until now. It's nothing is any different. I always, when I first became a devotee, it was almost like when you fall in love with, your dream prince or princess, and you think, I can't believe how lucky I am to have met this woman, or to have met this man. This is like Prince Charming has come, or my princess. She's so beautiful. She's so wonderful. I couldn't even imagine somebody like this. You just feel like, wow, the universe has blessed me. God has blessed me. So when I became a devotee, it was like I was overwhelmed. I can't believe that I actually found this. This is the truth that I was looking for. This is amazing. So it was always this intense appreciation. So that was the idea. How could I give that up?
Thank you, Maharaj. We have another question. It's about you speak about so much about book distribution during the time of Prabhupada.
Yes.
So my question is, today we have so much online books. The database, all the books are usually online. Mm-hmm. So how can devotees do the book distribution? Because in the early days, temple were maintained through book distributions. And today, nobody's buying the books. Nobody can get any books online. So is there any arrangement, or how can the temples we maintain or distribute these books online as part of book distribution?
Well, you may, I don't know the situation in your country. Maybe it's different. In America, they're still distributing lots of books. A lot of people, at least in America, even if they have them online, they actually prefer the book in their hand. But if you look at your country and say people prefer to read online, or due to the economic situation, it's easier for them to afford online books, you'll have to make some adjustments. Um, you can go out in Sankerton and, there's apps. You just transfer the book to their phone. You have the book and you go, would you like it digitally? You donate this, I'll knock it into your phone right now, or somehow or other, or here's a link, I'll send you a link, give me your WhatsApp number, and that link you can download it. We're definitely going to have to make those adjustments because um, obviously more and more people are reading digitally. It may never come to the point where digital is the only way, at least in our lifetime. It may never come to that point, but definitely digital is a way. So it's one way. And, you have to adjust to it. If in your country that's the most popular way, then you'll have to go out on digital book distribution with your digital means of selling your books or giving people the books. It's also an economic question as well. Well, if we were making money from book distribution and people maybe don't want to pay for digital or pay much, what do we do? These are situations we have to discuss and consider. I don't, because we say book distribution, then you might be thinking, well, if I don't distribute a physical book, then maybe I'm not pleasing Prabhupada because he said distribute books. But the broader, obviously, it's still a book, even though it's digital. The information is the same. So that's going to be a managerial decision for each temple or each country. They'll have to make, and it'll, obviously the world's going that digital direction. It's pretty far that way. But I've talked about it with other devotees, and they feel like books will always have a place, but maybe not as popular. I don't know if that answered your question. I don't know if that was the question.
Yes, Maharaj, thank you very much. If you have a question, kindly raise your hand or kindly unmute yourself and ask.
In Nigeria, English is the main language or the only
Yes.
language? And what's
No, English is language, and also in Ghana, English is official language.
okay?
Then
And on the street,
some French countries also, Ivory Coast, Togo, Benin, they're French.
okay. And the French also speak English or just French?
They speak French, just French.
And on the street, what do people speak to themselves?
There are so many local languages, but official language is English or French in West Africa.
Okay.
Yeah.
Je ne parle pas français. Seulement anglais. Anglais.
Yeah, right. Not a problem.
Does everybody speak? Do the English people, if English is your language, do you also learn French in school? Or it's optional?
It's optional, but right now most schools teach both languages, but it's optional.
Okay.
But most people travel in both countries, so many people speak English and French.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, like that. So my last question from me is on Kali Yuga. You speak about the mercy of Kali Yuga
Mm-hmm.
because of your lecture. Why am I born in this time of Kali Yuga? Why am I here? So if Kali Yuga, if being a devotee, all these things is the mercy we get from by being born now, so why do we complain about all the difficulties in material existence? Why don't we see everything as the mercy of Krishna that we are born in Kali Yuga? Because we preach so much about Kali Yuga, things are going to be tough, be very bad. Why don't we, as devotees, honorably see it as mercy, all these difficulties?
Kali Yuga is the best time. It's the best time to be born because you get the biggest reward. You get Mahaprabhu's mercy So you get the highest love and the easiest way. You get the best product at the cheapest price. So we have to see it that way. Kala doshani de rajan eko hi asti mahaguna kirtana deva krishnasya. That the great gift of kirtan comes. And as we said, the Bhagavatam is here. And so many great devotees, the Goswamis have come and then hold the cyclic succession. So, you know, and lately things have been difficult in the world. And it's all just, you know, I have a disciple and she always says, you know, I just don't feel like I'm ready to go back to Godhead. I'm too attached to this world. So I'm always preaching to her, you know, well, you have to think of this and consider that. And she says, yeah, I know, but still, I'm just, you know, I don't know if I'm ready. And then a few months ago, you know, when things got really bad with COVID, in one class, or she wrote me, she said, now I'm ready to go back to God. So, you know, you look at it that way and you realize that, you know, if we're still here after all, you know, it's Kali Yuga and we're still around, it means we haven't learned yet. So Kali Yuga is good for us because the pain is such that we need it to learn. But, you know, you may have heard that the demigods, when they analyze the mercy that's available in Kali Yuga, they're all thinking, well, let me take birth on earth so I can join the Hare Krishna movement or I can be part of the Leelas. So I think it's important for us to always, like I was saying for myself, I felt so fortunate to have Krishna consciousness. That's really, really important to always be appreciating it. And even though it's Kali Yuga, this is when Prabhupada comes and it's like the perfect time. And if we're appreciating it, it becomes a fantastic impetus to just keep going despite whatever's happening in Kali Yuga. And, you know, a lot of us feel like, well, it's Kali Yuga and I've done so many sinful things in my past. But Prabhupada's point was Krishna consciousness is more powerful than your conditioning. So if the Maha Mantra is more powerful than your conditioning, the Maha Mantra is more powerful than anything you're going to face. And so, you know, you really can't complain because it's like you're complaining you're sick, but the doctor gave you the medicine to cure you. Yeah, but I'm sick. But Prabhu, you have the medicine. This is a new cure. You know, this disease has never been cured before. And now you have the medicine. Yeah, but you know, I got to take 16 pills a day and it's kind of bothers me. And you know, you can't eat certain things. Yeah, but you're going to cure this incurable disease that has plagued you for a million lifetimes. Yeah, but you know, I wish it were easier. And we're like complaining about how difficult it is to take the 16 pills and not eat certain foods. It doesn't make any sense. Rather, we should be thinking, I have the pills. This is amazing. And no one has ever had these pills before. And these pills are going to cure my disease. So we should be celebrating rather than complaining. And, you know, of course, some people like to complain. It's kind of like, this is what they do. You know, it's a complain about anything. You know, if there were no problems in the world, they'd be complaining, well, there's no problems in the world. We need problems. We've got to fix something. You know, they'll complain about something. That's just the way people are. You know people like that? There's nothing to complain about. They'll find something. You ever met them?
Yes.
Right. Yeah. Prabhu, why are you so upset? I'm so upset because there's nothing to complain about, and I like to complain. Everything's just perfect. I can't complain. I was really depressed today. Yeah, so some people like that. They'll find something to complain about. Hare
Th-
Krishna.
Thank you, Maharaj. Our next question is from Ganga Prasad, Prabhu. Ganga,
Okay.
please.
Ganga Prasad. Hare Krishna.
Obeisances at the Lotus Maharaj, glory to Guru Angoranga, Guru Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna.
In the course of your lecture, you mentioned that the Damodar Leela is a special pastime enacted here, not in the spiritual world. I needed to have a better comprehension of this.
Well, in Krishna's eternal Leela, he's a like a 16-year-old boy. So that Leela of Krishna being born can only happen in this plane, or he only chooses to make it happen in that plane, because there he's eternally 16. And it's said in the Bhagavatam that these are the sweetest Leelas, these little baby Leelas, boy growing up and all the mischief and all that. And so we get to hear about those, and we will be participating in those Leelas after we leave this body, if we leave in Krishna consciousness and join that eternal Leela. So it's interesting because, and there's so many Leelas that Krishna is doing. And Krishna kills Kamsa, and in the spiritual world, he's not killing demons, and I know some of you really like those stories where Krishna kills demons. It's like, yeah, So, but he's not doing that in the spiritual world. So you get to the spiritual world and they'll say, welcome. And then you say, I have a question. Does Krishna kill any demons here? And they say, no, that just happens in the material world. And you go, oh, that's disappointing. Send me back to the material world. I like the demon leelas. So obviously it's not going to be that way, but those leelas go on. They only go on in the spiritual world, as Prabhupada said, as rumors. Like, oh, did you hear Krishna killed this demon? But there's no demon to kill. So here, when you become liberated, you're going to participate in those leelas. That's pretty special, isn't it? It's called Boma Vrindavan, the Vrindavan of this planet where Krishna appears. That's where we all go before we go to Goloka Vrindavan for the eternal leela. So Krishna's, he's an eternal youth around 16. So we don't have those pastimes. So we have him here in the Bhagavatam. And we get to hear, and not only hear, but we will get to participate someday. So it's like, if you look at it, like we're here in Kali Yuga, we're still here after all these lifetimes, and we're still struggling to try to enjoy. And Krishna and Lord Chaitanya says, okay, we'll make this I'm going to turn this around and make this a blessing. So somehow or other, to be where we are now is the greatest blessing, isn't it? Yes? That's how we see it. We're just blessed to have Bhagavatam, the holy name, and to be able to read all these leelas. So Krishna is really merciful to us. He comes and does all these growing up pastimes.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Maharaj, for that wonderful class. In the absence of no more question, we can close the class.
Okay.
So we humbly ask all the devotees, please kindly unmute yourselves and let's chant powerful Hare Krishna for Maharaj for coming.
Gauranga.
Kindly unmute yourself. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna.
Krishna
Krishna
Krishna, Hare Hare,
Krishna.
Hare Ram, Hare Ram,
Rama Hare Rama
Hare Rama
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 Hare
Rama
Hare Ram.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Hare
Krishna
Krishna.
Krishna, Hare
Krishna.
Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram,
Rama Hare Rama
Hare Rama
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 Hare
Rama Hare